Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Books and Books. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's a very special occasion. While you are silencing yourselves, please take a moment to look at our Books newsletter. This, of course, will give you a synopsis of all the wonderful events we have at Books and Books every week. You don't have to take this with you. You can go to our website and sign in with your email address. We can send you all these events on Facebook, so you don't miss anything. And as you can see, the lights and cameras, we are live. And the benefit of the cameras that are facing the audience, make sure you're supposed to be sitting here. You don't have to be. You can call the store anytime. We'll get a book signed for you. Send it to you or hold it here for you at this. As I said before, to have you here, but we'll show you the United States free of charge. Very pleased to have with us Emilie and Mika Brzezinski and local forest. Emilie Brzezinski began her art initially working in a variety of plastic, latex, and wood fiber. Equally inspired by minimalism and natural forms, early work consisted of transparent resin casts of trees and site-specific expressionistic figurative molds. Since the early 1990s, she has focused entirely on monumental wood sculpture, using chainsaw and axe to carve forms that breathe new life into found wood, arches, bowls, chairs, and discs. Nature is a great design, she writes, but its manifestations unfold in perfection and specificity. Respect to this persistent individuality and natural form is the underpinning of my work. As I carve the trunk, I retain the essential outline and gesture of the tree. Brzezinski's sculptural approach celebrates the knots, hollows, wounds, and cracks of the wood and the myriad possibilities suggested by organic forms. The Lure of the Forest explores the entirety of the artist's career, documenting over 80 works. Born in Geneva, Emilie Brzezinski immigrated to the U.S. and grew up in California. She graduated from Wellesley College in Massachusetts with a degree in the history of art. During the last 2 decades, she has had many gallery and museum installations in the U.S. and overseas. Her work is in the permanent collection of the Corcoran Museum, Washington, D.C., and has been shown at the Virginia Museum of Art, Katzen Art Center, Washington, D.C., and the Delaware Center for Contemporary Art. It can also be seen at sculpture parks across North America, such as the Grounds for Sculpture, New Jersey, Stone Quarry Hill Art Park, New York, and the Socrates Art Park, New York. About our interviewer this evening, Mika Brzezinski, of course, is the co-host of MSNBC's Morning Joe, which airs weekdays from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. She's also the author of all the books, All Things at Once, Knowing Your Value, Women, Money, and Getting What You're Worth, and Obsessed, America's Food Addiction, and My Own. Prior to joining MSNBC, she was an anchor of the CBS Evening News Weekend edition and a CBS News correspondent who frequently contributed to CBS Sunday Morning and 60 Minutes. In September 2001, she returned to CBS to become the principal Ground Zero reporter on the September 11th terrorist attacks. She's a native of New York City. We're very pleased to have them both with us this evening. Please welcome Emilie and Mika Brzezinski.
Thank you, Steve. How are ya? Welcome, everyone. Have a seat. Okay. Can you all hear me? Is this thing working? Good. Okay. Wow, what a great crowd. I'm so glad you filled the place up tonight. How many Morning Joe viewers do you have? Oh. Thank God. That's right. That is what I say. No, it's Morning Joe, and Morning Joe for a reason. We actually went to Dallas once, Joe and I, and nobody raised their hand. And it was like 2,000 people. I've never sweated more. Like, down my back. I was like, this is bad. So it helps a little bit if we know each other, which is great. How many Republicans in the room, may I ask? Okay, I'm not going to get hives tonight. Good. Love you anyway. How many independents? All right. And Dems. Okay. Wow. All right. But we love the Republicans. You are brave, and you want to talk. I like it. But we're going to have kind of a politics-free night, unless you don't want to in your Q&A. I thought we'd give that a break and celebrate art, and celebrate the lure of the forest, and celebrate my mother's life's work. And this is my mother, Emilie Brzezinski. She is a sculptor. And she works with a chainsaw, an axe, and a chisel, and she has for many, many years. And I learned as a very young age something that she knew about herself, that I only at like age 40 or so, a couple years ago, I realized was so important. And that is that she knew she was an artist. She always knew she was an artist, and then a wife, an artist, and then a mother, but always an artist. And I knew that because when I was 8, and I would run into the house and be like, Mom! And then I'd hear, vroom! And I'd be like, oh, that chainsaw. And I'd be like, I'd wait for it to stop, and then it would stop, and Mom! And and I knew that I could never scream louder than the chainsaw. So I would have to wait. Because she also had earphones on. That's the one protective gear she wears. Nothing else. And that's what's fascinating about her, because at her age, to never have had an injury makes you wonder, is she lucky or is she smart? And actually, what's that? Knock on wood. Knock on wood. They're actually giving her a steel chainsaw. Story about that coming up later. They're giving her protective gear. They were really scared when they saw her working. But actually, I think it's a little bit of both, because she knows trees. I did a piece on her for CBS Sunday Morning, and it was called, and I love the title, The Secret Shapes of Trees. She knows trees' secrets, and she knows where to go with the knife, with the blade. And that's why she never has a problem, because she knows when one's coming. And she kind of follows the mystery of the wood. And so first, Mom, I'm going to do a little bit of a presentation. I'll get right to the slides, which I'm sure I'll mess this up, and Steve will help me, save me from myself. There's our book, by the way. Her book is the culmination of our life together, tumultuously, as mother and daughter. It's the culmination of our relationship, really, which I don't know what we ever agreed on, if anything, except the vision of this book, which I don't think could be more perfect. We talked about it. I wrote the intro. My mother's life work is truly laid out in it with the help of some other artists and her description of what she does. And the way we discussed what this would look like and what this would feel like when you're flipping through the pages and smelling the paper and feeling almost the wood pop out at you, this book is perfect. So whatever we did, and I know it wasn't easy, I was not their easiest child, it has turned out beautifully. So The Lore of the Forest really does celebrate my mother's life as an artist, and her work, which this is how she does it, is littered across landscapes across the country. I mean, you see them everywhere in museums and on hillsides, and I'll show you that. But first, Mom, could you explain what it is about trees especially that drew you in and kept you for so many years? Because you started in plastics and resins and other materials.
I was already doing trees.
Okay, so tell me, what is it?
Well, I think it's because I'm from Eastern Europe, and in Eastern Europe there's a real reverence for trees, of the forest, and
I'll do it. Yours isn't working. Can we get hers working? I don't know if it's on. Okay, well,
Okay.
talk into Mike.
okay, I'll talk to okay. Why am I interested in wood? It's because my family comes from Eastern Europe. My father was constantly whittling something with a penknife. It was always around me, and it was very easy for me to pick up. I was growing up in California, and my father used to take me on these wonderful trips to the north shore of where there were tons of pieces of driftwood that came down the rivers and then washed up on the shores. And we used to collect these. So it's in my blood.
And what is it, Mom, about working with trees? I mean, this is the image that I grew up with, okay? I'd come home from school, let alone the dead deer hanging from the tree, thanks to my dad. This is McLean, Virginia, okay? And this is my mom. I didn't really understand it then, but I do now. But you were driven to work. I mean, it was hard labor in your studio all day long. What is it about a tree that you find? And by the way, she finds them everywhere and in the most inopportune locations.
Like in the middle of a 4-lane highway.
Exactly. Exactly. Or on an island in Maine when we're just trying to be a family, all right? You already have a problem there with 3 teenagers, and then you have my mom going, I love that trunk. I must have it. I must have that trunk. And so we're like, well, that's impossible, okay, because we're way out on an island. She finds a way to have, I don't know, a fisherman drag it?
No, watermen came and brought it in, and they pulled it up, and then it was taken to a friend's house where I could make noise with the chain, because I couldn't do that in Northeast Harbor, where all kinds of proper people live. And I worked on it 1 year, and then I came back the next year, and I drove it down to DC.
She rented a flatbed, Mack truck kind of thing, you know, like it was that big, and drove it from Northeast Harbor, Maine to Washington, D.C. And all these ideas she actually brings into reality through her own hard labor. Her hands are like leather gloves. And my father was pacing all over the master bedroom in McLean, Virginia, going, she's crazy. She's crazy. Why would she do this? And then like hours later, she's home! She's home! Because he doesn't like to be without her. So it's always a big production when she gets to get away and work with her wood. Is it an escape to an extent?
No, it's just a compulsion.
Oh, okay. Is there a difference? Okay.
No, but you have to understand that if you see something in a piece of wood, it means something very important to you. Whether it's a rhythmic line or whether it's a nest of bugs, whatever it is, it fascinates you and you want to have it, you want to possess it, you want to include it in your art.
That's and that actually now brings it to the storytelling of these pieces that you can. Let me try and work this. Let's try and show one. Mom, do you recognize this piece?
Well, this piece actually was one of the pieces that traveled quite far. It was found in Bar Harbor, and there's a very old property in Bar Harbor, and I always watch the trees because the trees are very old there. And yes, surely one day a huge spruce fell down, and I was there to witness it, and so I asked the school if I could have it, and they were very generous and said yes. And I brought this down to Casanova, New York, and
at the Stone Quarry Hill Art Park.
Yes, Stone Quarry.
And it's entitled Moody Spruce Echoes.
Well, the moody because it was a foggy day that day.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful piece. Okay, this is, I think, one of my favorites, although my favorite piece is your very latest, which we'll get to. But this one is called Skyline Passages, and, oh, I have a notation on the piece of paper here. This takes a while to load. So this one is from 2006 as well. And, Mom, if you could explain how this came to be, and also, if you can, describe how big they are.
Well, first of all, they're higher than I am. So they're really quite large because also they have a long extension. But this composition actually is the third of a series of shows I've had using these trunks. The first one was at the Corcoran, where it was part of a piece called Vortex, and I put them in a swirl in the beautiful room they gave me to show this thing. These pieces are rare in the sense that they involve a tree that for some reason splits at early on, and it begins to grow this way. And both these two hands I cut down here, and each one became one of these slabs. And I had a forester help me find some because I couldn't find enough on my own. And he actually provided me with the materials I need. I'm always looking for something special, something new, something that's extraordinary in order to be able to do my work.
I love this one. Isn't it beautiful? Okay, this one's not going to take as long. Skyward Oaks is next, Mom. This one's was Vancouver.
Vancouver Biennale.
Did I do it wrong? Or maybe it takes a while. I don't want to hit it twice. I'll do it one more. Oh,
okay.
Okay, let's hope. Oh, I'll go back. Okay. Skyward Oaks, absolutely gorgeous. And again, I can help a little bit, but a person is about that big. You get a sense of how huge these pieces are.
The pieces are large, yes. But I think that one of the challenges is to do something large. Why do I like to work large? Because if I work on something that's small, I look down at it, it looks kind of small and pathetic on the ground. If I get it eye level, it's already something for me, something that exists. But if you get a piece which is way up there, and you start looking at it, all kinds of things take place. For example, there's an attenuation that takes place visually. The piece goes from bigger to smaller. There's much more sense of movement if you see a big piece. And all these things attract me to move to create something like this.
And you're not afraid of the scale.
Oh, no, no.
You know, my mom, and you'll see in the book, there's a fantastic double picture inside of her working in her element, I believe the headline is, on this massive trunk, and she's just gutting it. But in the back here, you can see, first of all, how much we look alike, but this is her. Isn't that amazing? In her studio in McLean, Virginia. I think it might have been some sort of post-White House deal between her and my dad. I think he owed her, let's just say. That's my read on it, although they fought in Polish, so I don't know. But look at the chains that all these pieces are attached to what's called a winch.
Yeah.
And so she can hold 2,000 pounds and move it around, and it's as if she's dancing with these pieces. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to die. I'm going like this when she's moving them around. She knows exactly where they're going. She knows exactly the weight. She knows exactly how they're going to sit, how they're going to stand. If a piece, and when you see Lament, you'll know what I'm talking about, can stand like this and not fall over even though it's a ton. There's a real synergy that she has with trees that has everything to do with an engineering background and just a basic knowledge of how they grow. Is
When
that fair,
I was in
Mom?
high school, I was given one of those tests, what you're going to be doing when you're grown up. And the whole class took it, but I turned out to be a mechanic.
She really is. I mean,
So to do things like that, you really have to be part mechanic.
okay, we're going to go, to family trees next here. All right. So
This is
don't like the picture she picked of mine, but this is family trees, and you must have found the worst photo of me possible. But all of us, no, really, you worked hard. That doesn't happen by accident. Having said that, this is an incredible show that you had, and I think it's back on.
Well, actually, it went to Europe on tour. I showed it a couple of times in America, and then it went on tour in Europe. And now it's in a place in Spain for a permanent installation in a women's museum. So that I'm very delighted about that.
I think it's the concept of it is amazing, because here are the trunks she worked on, but then she began to take something different. Instead of digging out and finding the secret, you put us in the trees.
Well, it actually is something to do with my idea of space, and all of my work involves negative space. But in this one is an additional factor in the sense that there's the space of the photograph. So that
And all of us are in there, including baby Aurora, my daughters Emilia and Carly. They got good pictures.
it was a very personal piece.
Yes, it was. It was personal. I'm going to the next one, which while that changes, I'll turn my page here. No, family trees is incredible. Oh, okay. Maybe I'll press it again. What do you think, Steve? I don't want to pass it. Where's the thing? Here. This is Lament, and it's my favorite. Look how big. We did a conference with Ariana Huffington in New York City at the New York City Center, which is a massive stage. Look how big they are. And it's 3 pieces. My mother will tell you the story of how she came upon each one separately. But look at this. Now, I know that you see a rope here. That's just for safety reasons. It stands itself.
Actually, I did this one first.
Okay.
I found a piece of wood which was really unusual, remarkable for a red oak, but it actually bent. And it was trying to get at light. But usually those trees just pass away, but this one somehow managed to get to a very ancient age, and I got hold of it and made a single sculpture. And then I felt that it wasn't really completely fulfilled, so I found another piece right here where I had 2 of them together, and it was very pleasing to me. But right inside my studio, sitting there waiting to be used, was a 3rd red oak, which I said, oh my heavens, why didn't I notice that before? And so I I included it, and now I'm very satisfied with the sculpture.
It evokes the name, which is lament.
Lament.
It evokes sadness.
Yes.
The first time I saw it, it was outside. This is the paved area outside her studio where she'll stage something to look at it. And she showed it to me, and I texted it to Ariana, and Ariana Huffington was like, "We must have it at the conference!" Which you have no idea what it took to get it into the city center in New York City. But we had it at the conference. Because it is so mystical and sad, and like it really speaks to you.
Well, that's
It's my favorite.
the wood spoke to me of sadness.
Yeah, yeah. How long did it take from beginning to end?
Well, 5 years. No, but I wasn't working on it all the time. It's just that I got one, then I got next, and then I got the third.
Yeah, it never really was complete until you found.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. Oh, thanks. Okay. We got to explain this because this is a piece that my mother's working on now. This is the trunk. Is this the one that was lying down when I interviewed
Yeah,
you?
that's the same one.
Oh my gosh. So I sat on top of this interviewing her for Morning Joe, and now she has absolutely cleaned out the inside. You get a sense of the scale. And then there's this picture here. My mother's going to explain the story.
Well, everyone has been following the news from Kiev, and on one day I found this picture in the New York Times, and what amazed me about this picture was there was not one single face smiling. It's just all grim people, and I felt that this was something that we have to look at a little more closely, and I decided to use this photograph to have my photographer arrange it so that it would be able to be put inside my tree shape. And that's what I'm working on right now. It's very challenging.
Very moving. I think it's going to be a powerful piece. I'm going to show our audience. We're going to open it up to questions in just a few minutes. But I have to explain this, if I may. I'm very proud of this. My mother is a spokesmodel. Steel chainsaws. Actually, they're hosting a wonderful event with me in Washington at the Krieger Museum, where 12 of my mother's pieces will be shown. If you were in Washington, September 18th, come. Call Joseph, get invited. It's going to be a great party. But it's also going to show about 12 of her pieces, and including Lament. And the folks from Steel Chainsaws are going to be there. They're going to give my mother a chainsaw. They're going to have her try out the battery-powered one, and I don't think she's going to like it, but it is lighter and it is safer. But she won't like it, trust me. But the funniest thing is, or the greatest thing is, they like her so much that she's part of a new marketing campaign that's coming out in a few months for Steel Chainsaws. Real people, yeah. Real People, Steel People is the name of the campaign. And there's going to be my mom with her chainsaw. And it's actually brilliant on their part to show that chainsaws, are not just in a construction zone anymore. They will outfit her appropriately so they don't get sued with safety equipment. And that's going to be fun. They're actually going to be videotaping the Krieger event, all the pieces coming in, and you with your chainsaw. So look for that in your local TV stations. And then finally, and most importantly, what was harder, dealing with the trees or bringing up me?
Well, my daughter never studied. She was so annoying because she was an intelligent child, but she decided to do anything that was opposite to what her older brothers did. And the brothers got the grades, so she decided, okay, that's not for me. And I had to struggle with her to get her into Georgetown.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, that was revealing.
But she made it.
At Tina Brown's party, my dad announced that he wrote my essay. and my best friend's essay. And they usually like to announce that I got the lowest SAT scores in the history of Williams College, which I ultimately transferred into. But no, she had 3 kids, and the 2 older brothers and me, the boys and me, and I was in some ways the toughest one. But, the girl, too, which I think sometimes that happens with mothers and daughters. But I actually say it kind of seriously because I notice, and I write about this in the intro, that we sort of feel like you uncovered our secrets as you brought us up. You let us find our way, but you were tough. And that
it all worked.
It all worked. And there may be some synergy between your art and us, but I know if I ask you that question, you will say there was none. Because we usually don't agree. But I'm beginning to understand it more. And I appreciate it so much. I appreciate a woman with a strong sense of identity. And when you see the pages of this book, the work that this woman has done, and this is in a generation where maybe the glass ceiling wasn't so broken, where maybe the rules weren't so open to opportunity for us, and somehow she always got back in her studio and put on those gloves and picked up that chainsaw or that axe and got to work and finished a concept that she had in her head hours, days, weeks ago. That takes something. That takes an artist. So this is my mother. She's a sculptor. We would love to take your questions, but first maybe a round of applause for her. We could do a few questions if you have any, if you want to ask. Okay. Yeah.
Hello. Hello. Nice. Thank you all for coming. By the way, Mika, Hoya Saxa.
Oh, yeah.
Ms. Brzezinski, I'm fascinated by your work, the actual materiality of it itself, the actual wood, and it actually evokes a lot of artists that I've studied. I also studied art history as well. And I see a lot of, for example, Eva Hesse and Ana Mendieta's some kind of parallelism in it, but they both were prominent female artists. Eva Hesse, of course, prominent post-minimalist, Ana Mendieta all around. But I look at your sculptures, and I also see a lot of Ana Mendieta's work, who also did sculpture as well with wood. And I'm just curious to know, as an artist, did you ever sense that femininity take part in your career? Or because I know that a lot of female artists prefer to be known as simply artists, but just like Mika just said right now, it's curious to know in your career how that evolved, or if not.
Well, it was always me and the material. Nothing else interfered. So when I saw a wood which had some potential for unusual form, I went for it. So it was really very, very direct reaction to the wood.
Any other questions? I'll go over here.
Every morning we watch The Morning Joe while my husband irons his clothes. And we were watching the other morning when you were talking about your mother, and for Mother's Day he took me out and he got me a 17-inch steel chainsaw. I'm motivated.
No way. Are you serious? That's awesome. Mom, you are inspiring frightening things. I'm not sure what's going to happen there with the ironing and everything. Any other questions or statements like that?
Actually, the chainsaw has inspired a new group of artists in America.
And woodsmen.
Because it allows the artists to go much faster and more effectively into creating form. So that my generation is very indebted to that.
Question over here.
Yeah, I'm just curious, the 4 pieces that were shown on the horizon,
yes,
it was difficult to tell how big those pieces were.
They
Can
were
you
big.
tell us?
That big.
Not those.
Those. Yeah.
They're huge. I mean, I looked at that picture and I thought, oh, I could jump that with a horse. That was my, it looked like jump. Set up for me. And then I realized it had nothing to do with me. And my mother said, that actually they are 6 feet. 6 feet tall. I mean, they're
6 feet.
Can you imagine? No. And of course, it's a train, kind of a
It's like a caravan.
like a caravan, which now I can't get that image out of my mind because it's so beautiful.
But when you are in the country and you see that from afar away, it is impressive. Yeah.
I saw when you explained how you had the rigging done when you worked from the top, but seriously, how did you get up to the top of those pieces to work? I mean, where did you sit or how did you do it?
First of all, I work on the ground.
She lays them down.
In other words, I lay the trunk on the ground and I cut this way. If I were to cut this way with it standing up, I would kill my arms.
And then you roll it around?
So I roll it around and I cut it the way I need. Yeah.
On the chain. I'm going to take this one. I'm coming.
I was just wondering, do you have apprentices or any people that help you work with these large pieces, or do you work completely
I
alone?
have one assistant like half-time. I don't like to work fast. And I like
But
it
you
to...
have to live.
Not really. That's the way I am.
Madam Brzezinski, Bill Dunlap, an old friend of yours. How are you? I'd like to point out to this crowd that the Low owns something of yours, a rather nice piece. Whether it's out right now, I don't know. But I've had the good fortune to see your work at the Corcoran and the Hemicycle and at the Katzen. And what's remarkable is not just the scale, but they're intimate and intimidating simultaneously, kind of like you.
Well, you know, my father might be watching on live stream. In fact, I think he is, and I will just point that out that Dad, he just said she was intimate and interesting. He gets very jealous. Intimidating. That's hot. That's actually hot. And oh, right here. Question here.
Actually, it's less of a question than a statement. And Madam Brzezinski, if you'll, I apologize. I'm directing this comment to your daughter. I am an avid follower of your program. And I want you to take a message back to Mr. Scarborough that there's a mad Cuban in Miami who wants to slap him every time he cuts you off. Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna speak in defense of Joe. Can I? No, well, I'm not on tomorrow. I'm sleeping in, baby. This is a guy, he interrupts, and he has got a lot to say and a lot of passion and a lot of belief. I do. I want to say, just for the record, this is a guy, when I wasn't receiving equal pay, and he made so much more, like 14 times more, he worked with me to rectify that. And even made sure that his bonuses that he cut were sent to me until my pay was rectified. Something to think about. So it's hard for me to, like, take the low-hanging fruit. Yeah, it's just, he's a good guy. Yeah. So where are we here? Anybody else?
Hi. I've had the opportunity to work with a chainsaw, and it almost ripped my arm off. When we had Hurricane Andrew, a friend of mine from California noticed, you know, we had all these trees down. They said, "What do you guys need?" And I said, "Send us a chainsaw." And so they sent a Stihl chainsaw, and to see that, you know, you're so fluid with it, and your ability to see it almost like a drawing tool in your relationship to your material is amazing. And because I think until you've handled a piece of machinery like that and see the risk involved and just the slightest nuance of surface pulls the chain flying off its bar, and you really have to be a mechanically inclined person to a very strong degree to handle that, and I'm very impressed.
Well, I just want to say that the chainsaw, at first I used it to block things out, get things out of the way. And then I realized they leave a certain imprint. So I began to use that. And as time went on, I worked towards lament, where I'm actually using the chainsaw to express my sense of outrage. It's a kind of a violent.
One more. I'll also add that to your point, when we were younger, and I say this like 3 kids interrupting her and eating something, and she would have to stop the chainsaw and stop the thought and put it down, and never once, like I think of all the fingers she should have lost in frustration when we come in the room and burst in the door and need something like, where are my socks? You know, and she would, so added kind of frustration of trying to raise 3 children and figure out this career. One more question? Right there. Okay.
Did you ever work in anything besides wood, and what led you to choosing wood as your medium?
Plywood, did you say?
Did you ever work with anything, any medium beside wood, and what led you to wood?
Oh yes, I worked with plastics, and pretty much that's it, plastics and wood. But it was always related to trees. In the plastics, I made castings of the trees, and I used the idea of transparency as the basic statement.
She would put rubber molds on trees on my school property, and then leave them there for quite some time, and then pull them off and fill it with plastic so you could see the tree from the inside. The finished product is absolutely fascinating. The process was horrifying to a 9-year-old. It's true. So thank you. My mom's, we're going to head, we'll be around for a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks to you watching online. Don't forget, you can call and order a book. For the sake of time, if you could do me a great favor and fold your chairs as you rise. The books are already signed. They'll visit with you for a couple of minutes up here, but the books are signed behind the counter. Thank you all so much for coming.